Okay, I'm just going to wait a minute until everybody joins. Okay, so welcome to today's presentation on what does it mean to eat intuitively. My name is Molly Schlapp-Gilgoff, and I'm one of the managers of mission initiatives here at the National Eating Disorders Association. I'm so excited to welcome you all here. I'd like to take a brief moment just to talk a little bit about the organization and the work that we do. NEDA is a nonprofit organization working to increase public awareness of eating disorders, provide information and resources, advance research, and advocate for change through campaigns like the Eating Disorders Awareness Week and Screening Week, and through Campus Warriors and our Care Fair programs. We are working to increase public understanding of these complex disorders. We also provide information and resources through the Grace Holland Cozine Resource Center, our toolkits, a screening tool which has helped over 1 million people, as well as through our educational programs like the Eating Disorders presentation and webinars like this one we're having tonight. Additionally, we invest in innovative research that helps to develop and further effective treatments and work in collaboration with other programs and groups to improve policies and systems to prevent eating disorders and excuse me, and expand access to quality care. If you would like to support our work and webinars like this one, I'll include the link to donate later in the chat. So this webinar is presented by Debra Spector, who is a registered and certified dietitian nutritionist. Debra has had a private practice on Long Island, New York since 1990, where she specializes in eating disorders, disordered eating, and practices the philosophy of the anti-diet movement and body size acceptance. Her award-winning book, The Things I've Seen People Do With and Without Food, has helped the community get a better understanding of the internal struggles that people face who have eating disorders. If you have any questions throughout the presentations, please share them in the chat feature, and I'll be sure to relay them to Debra at the end of the presentation during a period of Q&A. Now I'll turn it over to Debra. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Molly. I want to say first that it is an honor to be able to present this webinar to the community, and I am beyond honored that NEDA has allowed me to do this. So with that said, as Molly said, this is an interactive webinar. So before we get started, those of you that signed on already, I'm going to ask you to grab some paper and a pen or a pencil, so that way when we open up the chat, you can actually start writing some notes. As Molly said, I'm also going to encourage you to keep your questions to the end, and I promise that I will give you time to answer any questions you might have during the webinar. As a matter of fact, when I go to webinars and conferences, I find it really advantageous to write my questions down, because as you go forward through a lecture or a webinar, sometimes you have a question and then you forget it. But I promise I'm going to give you guys time at the end to discuss anything that you might have. So with that said, I'm going to begin by sharing with you what the takeaways of the webinar are. First, how do you know when it's actually time to begin the process of intuitive eating? Second, what does intuitive eating look like from my perspective as a registered dietitian? And last, how can you learn from this experience if you've actually experienced trauma or struggle with PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder and don't want to or don't like the way it feels to feel your body or the internal feelings of hunger and fullness? So with that said, I also want to say that when we open up the chat, and I encourage you to participate, this is a non-judgment zone. Just like I wrote in my book, this is a relatable discussion. A lot of people have inside their heads thoughts and food noise. That's what I call it. And I encourage you to open up your own experiences, so when I answer any questions that you might have, other people might be thinking the same things as you. Okay, so Those of you that just signed on, Molly said, my name is Debra Spector. I'm a registered dietitian who specializes in eating disorders. I try to help people establish a normal relationship with food, weight, and body image. And the most important takeaway from this webinar is going to be, how do I know I'm ready to eat intuitively? So as we begin, the first question we ask is, how do I know I'm ready? Well, when I do an assessment of a patient, which is my first appointment, I have a whole list of criteria that I ask, and this is one of the ways I can determine where you are and where you begin. One of the things that we have to do as registered dietitians, and primarily, is to make sure that you're meeting your nutritional needs. We cannot begin the process of intuitive eating until we're clear that you're at that spot. So this is not the focus of the webinar, but I am going to just lay out for those of you who don't know me or have never seen a dietitian before, what that looks like a little window screen box, okay? So first, we need to make sure that you're taking in all of your macronutrients, okay? So instead of using that as a big word, what does that mean? It means that you're taking in foods that contain carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. From those foods, we get micronutrients, which are all the different vitamins and minerals that your body needs, your organs need for health and well-being. All right? It's very important that you guys understand that as much as there may be a lot of information on the internet or a lot of information on social media, there's factual information. I always tell everybody Google is not a medical provider. And when you hear factual information, you can get a better understanding about the direction that you need to move into. Okay? So if you are eating a balanced meal, now, a balanced meal may look different if you're in a residential treatment center. And for those of you who don't know what that means, it means that you're in an inpatient setting where you're working towards your own developmental skills to establish the next step, which would be me, the outpatient dietitian. Okay? We do things a little bit different than it is or was for you in residential treatment. And the way I define as an outpatient registered dietitian a balanced meal is a meal that contains some kind of a starch or grain. Notice I didn't use the word carbohydrate or carb. It contains some kind of a protein and a fruit or a vegetable. I smile when I say fruit or vegetable because a lot of my patients at the first visit don't recognize that fruits and vegetables are carbohydrates. They're usually safe for a lot of my patients, but they don't know that. And if those of you who do here, maybe my patients are on here, and welcome if you are, they are. Okay? So what happens is when you are eating a balanced meal and you're eating non-restrictive, not giving up macronutrients, your body will function well. We don't want you to have fatigue or feel tired or have migraines or headaches or low blood sugar or hypoglycemia. Because when you're in that state, we cannot begin the process of intuitive eating. All right? So this is how you know you're ready. Now, from my perspective, the registered dietitian, how do I know you're ready? Okay. When you are able to slow down and actually connect with your food, not be robotic, not just follow the meal plan in that little window box or track things on an app. And I ask a lot of detailed questions to make sure that you're at that spot. We can then begin the process. We want you as dietitians to have pleasure with food. We want you to not always feel like you need to be distracted while you're eating, watching Netflix, sitting on your phone, going on social media, going on your laptop or the TV. We want you to really be connected to the food and have pleasure, okay? So the other thing that's really important from my perspective is to actually be able to feel the feelings inside your body. What does it feel like to feel hungry? Again, I'm going to open the chat room in a few minutes. What does it feel like to feel full? And not just have an emotional reaction to it or be robotic. Now, it's always important when we begin the process of intuitive eating to also recognize that there is a significant difference between appetite. Appetite is here. Appetite is, I want that. I need that. That looks good. Ooh, what is that? It's not coming from inside your body. It's a different kind of dialogue. For a lot of people here on this webinar, I call it food noise. In my book, I call it the uninvited guest. It's sort of like having somebody that shows up at a party that you didn't invite and you're like, who is that? Why are you here? Which side of the family did you come from? It just shows up. And it's a lot of chatter. When you begin the process of intuitive eating, we want that to be gone. We want that dialogue or chatter to be gone. It is exhausting to have that food noise all day long. The other thing is, how do you know when to stop? Like a lot of my patients during the assessment, when they meet me for the first time, and I ask them some very, very intimate questions about hunger and fullness, I ask them, well, when you have hunger, are you always giving yourself permission to eat? And also, when do you know when to stop? Okay, so for those of you just joining me, I'm going to encourage you to grab a piece of paper and a pen or a pencil, write your questions down, and then we're going to move forward. So I want you all to write this chart for me. Now, for those of you who have had me in my practice or have been inpatient or residential, sometimes the physical hunger scale may look different than mine. Perhaps it's a scale from 1 to 10. What I've done for this webinar is simplify it to make it a little bit easier for those of you who have never seen a dietitian or who have never ever gone through this before. Maybe there are therapists here who don't really know what this is. Now, this is a physical hunger scale. This is not emotional hunger, okay? So on this scale, I want you to see that we have a 1, which is starving. We have a 2, which is hunger. A 3, which is neutral. And I'm going to talk about all of these as we move forward. A 4 is full, and a 5 is uncomfortably full. I want you to circle the 2. I have my reasons. I want you to circle the 4. And then I'd like you to actually draw a line from the 2 to 4 and connect it. I am going to keep referencing back to this throughout the webinar to provide a little bit more confidential security there than not, okay? So again, a 1 is starving, a 2 is hunger, a 3 is a neutral or no feeling at all, a 4 is full, and a 5 is uncomfortably full. Now, Molly, if you don't mind, I'm going to open up the chat. And I really want you guys, again, to remember that this is a non-judgment zone. I want you to be able to express to this webinar and this forum what it feels like for you. There are no wrong answers. And Molly is going to say them so that way I can hear them and we can talk about them in a minute. But what does it feel like for you to feel physical hunger? And I'll give you a second. And Molly, when you're ready, we'll give everybody a minute. Hi, Molly.
Hi, just waiting for some responses to come in.
Okay.
So far, people are sharing stomach growling and not being able to focus, having heartburn or nausea, headaches, feeling uncomfortable, a feeling of emptiness. and their stomach feeling like it's in knots, their stomach tightening or feeling empty. Um, Someone said it feels scary.
Mhm. Okay. Anybody else?
Someone shared it says they feel a sense of weakness, that they get shaky, um, that it's unsettling, and that they get the shakes.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you, Molly, for sharing that. So I'm very grateful that you guys were able to just feel comfortable in this non-judgment zone to express how you feel. So I'm going to go back now to the hunger scale. Okay. So that 2, or that normal hunger, comes from inside of you. This is physical hunger. Okay. The grumble, the growl, a hollow feeling. For me, I have this like almost like a twingy, like a hunger pang inside me that says, Deb, you need to begin to eat something like now. Okay. Sometimes I get a grumble or growl after eating. That's more like digestion. But some of you answered emotionally, which is okay. You're allowed to feel emotions when you have these feelings that bring you discomfort or don't make you feel very good. Some of you actually described, which I'll go over in a minute, what starvation feels like. All right. So, with that said, I'm going to keep moving forward. And thank you for that. I'm going to go back. Now, I want to go back for a minute. When you have physical need for food and your body is expressing to you some of those things I just shared with you, real internal physical feelings of hunger, some of my patients decide at that time, I'm not going to eat. And it could be for a lot of reasons. It could be because it's not time to eat. They're still working in their little window box and not being as flexible as they're supposed to be when we begin the process of intuitive eating. Maybe it's not their lunchtime at work or school. Maybe they're holding off for a lunch break with a friend. But what happens is when you do not begin to eat when you're hungry, a lot of times the feeling of hunger will go away. That is what we as dietitians and medical providers call the hypometabolic response. And as time goes on, it can cause what we call metabolic dysregulation, and you end up at that 1. The feeling of hunger can sometimes go away. That is exactly what that is. That is not the goal of intuitive eating. And when you're working with your dietitian, he or she will be able to help you get to the point where you're more comfortable and familiar with what normal hunger feels like. Why? Because I'm going to move forward, keep moving. When you end up at that 1 and you are starving and you move past hunger, medical consequences occur, which actually some of you mentioned. Low blood sugar, which we call hypoglycemia, headaches, migraines, fatigue, feeling tired, lack of concentration. This is restrictive eating. When we hear you guys go into that place, we know that possibly we need to take a step back and define the process moving forward again, which is fine. I always tell my patients, it's okay to pause. It's progress, not perfection. Sit down. Let's have a discussion. Why are you having a difficult time moving forward? Did something happen? Are you afraid? Some people said it's really scary to feel hungry. All right, and remember, I am not going to discount trauma and PTSD in this webinar as we move forward. So, this is a roadblock to intuitive eating. We don't want to end up here because there are medical consequences. Now, The 3 on that hunger scale, I'm going to go back, okay, all of you have this, is neutral. I want to really have a discussion with you about this place. A 3 or neutral is no physical feeling inside of your body. There is nothing going on. There's no feelings, there's no distraction, nothing's happening. Now, I'm going to go forward. Bear with me. This is more appetite. There's nothing going on, and there could be chatter. For instance, I had my sandwich, which is my protein and my starch or grain, hopefully. I had my fruit and my vegetable. I had my drink, and I had my bag of chips, but I don't really want to eat the chips because I'm going to meet friends and family tonight for dinner, and I want to save room. So what happens is if you stop at that 3 in that neutral place, you're not going to feel full. And I want to be honest that if you stop there, I can almost bet, and I never bet, anybody in my family has heard this 1,000 times from me, I never bet unless it's a sure thing. You will absolutely feel hungry much sooner. Now, if one of the goals of recovery and one of the goals of intuitive eating is to get rid of the food noise and have food freedom, why would you want to be doing that? All right, because if I'm in the middle of my webinar and I am talking to you guys and my stomach starts to growl, I'm going to be distracted. It's going to take me away from my task at hand. That is absolutely not where you want to be. You want to really try to move past that. For some of you, I know it's new. I know it's uncomfortable, but we really want to try to rebuild trust within your body to develop these skills so that way you can move along on that recovery bridge and get to be where you need to be and be able to have that food freedom and that self-trust and eat without rules and rituals and beliefs that are wrapped around your thought process. Okay? That is our goal. Now, with our next slide, I'm going to open it up to Molly again. And what I'd like you to do in the chat is actually describe to me in a non-judgment zone, what does it feel like to feel physically full? And I'm going to give you guys a second. Molly, I know you're there somewhere, to put in the chat what it feels like to feel physically full. And I'm going to give you guys a few minutes to write what your thoughts are. And again, remember, a lot of people might be feeling these feelings as well.
So far, we're getting feeling satisfied, tired, and sleepy. A lot of satisfied, actually. Others say they feel like they failed. They feel guilty, bloated, sort of lethargic, and uncomfortable.
Okay.
They feel sick, and others say they feel comfortable, calm, and present. And others say a loss of interest in the food in front of them, that their stomach feels, again, bloated or distended. Uh, Others say content, happy, energized, uh, like their body doesn't like what they eat, uncomfortable, more sleepy. So a lot of
Wonderful. This is great, Molly. I'm so happy. This is wonderful. And I really am happy that all of you felt that in this non-judgment webinar, you can share those things because I like everybody to hear what you have to say and hear that they're not alone, that they may also experience those feelings, but have shame or guilt about feeling those things, which is again, not a goal or an end result of intuitive eating. So now here we are, and I'm going to go back again. I'm going to keep doing this, everybody. All right, here we back are to the physical hunger scale. What I love that some of you expressed is that you felt satisfied when you felt full. What I always say to my patients, and I love talking about, is that satisfied is full, But it's also when you are at this stage of recovery and beginning the process of intuitive eating, you are also satisfied with the choice that you made. You are satisfied emotionally with the choice that you made. You are not just following a meal plan or what your app says or following a diet on a program, that you are actually not being conformed to diet culture and you are satisfied with the choices that you made. I understand, again, for my patients who have had trauma or PTSD, that the physical sensation of fullness is so scary and very uncomfortable. For me, physical fullness is a tiny pressure in my belly that says, Deb, you need to stop now. Sometimes, because I'm human, so are you, we go past full. It may be because everybody else is sitting there and eating and you take a couple of more forkfuls. Or maybe you like what you're eating. I know I'm a great cook and sometimes I keep eating. Why? Because it's good. Why would I want to save this much on my plate? Okay? But when you are establishing this well, a goal of intuitive eating is really working hard, everyone, to begin to eat when you are hungry and stop eating at normal full. All right? I describe full to uncomfortably full in a way that all of you can understand. Okay? I always use Thanksgiving as an example because everybody talks about it. In diet culture, it's huge. It's a huge time of year to stop dieting until New Year's when we all make our resolutions, which to me means that people aren't eating intuitively or they don't know what this means. Because you can eat intuitively anywhere, at a restaurant, at a wedding, Thanksgiving, Christmas. I sit and do this with all of my patients. It's so important to not have start and stop buttons when you are eating intuitively. So let's go back so you can get a better mindset of how this works in a holiday setting. I'll use Thanksgiving. Traditionally in my family, we usually go to my brother's for Thanksgiving. He's an amazing cook. By the way, everybody in my family is an amazing cook, just so you know. Anyway, I walk into that house and I am hungry, and he cooks a lot. Most of the people in my family cook a lot. And I begin to eat when I'm hungry at a 2, and I continue to eat and move through this chart. And then somewhere between that 3 and 4, I pause and I check in with my body and I say, Deb, how are you feeling right now? Do you want to take an extra spoonful of my cranberry relish, which I love? Or do you want to save a little room because you drive out every year on Long Island? We have a pie farm called Brian Farm. And for those of you on Long Island, you know it's the $30 pie farm. And I love it. And if I want to save room for a piece of pie, then I need to pretty much keep moving through my festive meal and sort of stop between the 3 and 4. Why? Because if I get to that full, that 4, which all of you here, all have either experienced that feeling or sit around the table while everybody's talking and talking about how they physically feel, which is very uncomfortable for a lot of people on this forum. But how interesting is it that they may say that they're full, and then when the pie is out, they keep eating. And then we walk away feeling uncomfortably full. Now, this happens sometimes, but it is not the end result or goal of intuitive eating. We want to be able to make a safe place where all foods fit, and it's okay to keep eating and save room for something that you love. All right? So I'm going to keep moving forward. Again, it's going to keep doing this. I think it's kind of nice that you guys get to see a little bit of it if you had a question. Now, For those of you who have read my book, and those of you in my practice, which this may be review, I have developed an acronym to FEAR, false evidence appearing real. A lot of my patients who have eating disorders struggle with mental health issues, and one of them tends to be anxiety. Anxiety is part of this. What if I eat when I'm hungry and stop when I'm full? I'm going to gain weight. What if, like Deb said, what if I eat until I'm full, but take that extra forkful, or keep eating because it was really yummy, or because everybody else was eating, and I get to feel uncomfortably full? I'm going to gain weight. Well, that is fear. That is not going to happen. When you become very well versed with intuitive eating and you begin to eat when you are hungry and continue to eat, not stop because you think you should, but get to the point where you are full, that is not weight gain. As a matter of fact, believe it or not, that's how we as dietitians can help you establish a set point weight where your body wants to be. Again, to go back, we need to make sure you're meeting your nutritional needs, and then we get to that place, okay? So all of the what ifs, all of the anxiety, all of the fear, as you move forward in a supportive environment, it starts to get diminished and go away, and you start to become more comfortable. All right? Now, as promised, I want to share with you something. I've been in private practice now, I can't believe it, for 35 years. And as an old school dietitian, a lot of the girls and boys that are doing it now are half my age, which is fine. I remember back in the day when I started. My training, I worked with an incredible group of people and therapists. And before I even begin this, I really want to say something to you. Everyone here that's a colleague of mine that knows me personally and has worked with me in the present, past, and will in the future knows that I cannot do this work alone. I will never do the job alone. I work in a team, collaboratively. What does that mean? It means that your team helps you become the best version of yourself, because we, behind the scenes, when you're not talking to us, talk about you, help you. With that said, what does that look like? And the team could look different, but my teams are consistently me, the registered dietitian, not a nutrition coach, not a health coach, not a nutritionist, a registered dietitian. I'm a medical provider. Nutritionists cannot read blood work for eating disorders. I'm trained to do that. A therapist, a psychiatrist, if you need psychotropic medication or medication to help you with some of those mental health issues that you're struggling with. And of course, a medical doctor. That is a basic team. Why I talk about this at this slide is because sometimes as I'm moving forward working with a patient will open up to me and say, Deb, I had this traumatic event happen to me when I was younger, and that's why I don't eat foods that are white, or foods with my fingers, or foods that smell this way, or foods that have this different color. All right? It is then my responsibility as your dietitian to share that with the team, because there are other things that have to be worked on. So with that said, I have developed a technique for those of you who have had trauma, PTSD, to feel hungry from the outside in. So I'm going to go back to the slide with that 1 to 5 scale. All right? If you are eating a balanced meal when you are hungry at a 2, and you're moving forward, and stop when you are full. That should hold you over for anywhere from 3 to 5 hours. That is what I want you to use if you don't want to feel your feelings inside your body. Time frame. For instance, if lunch is at 12 o'clock at work or school, and you begin to eat when you are hungry, if you are using time, 12 o'clock, it means that you absolutely must eat again at 3 o'clock or 5 o'clock. It doesn't matter to me that you have a dinner reservation at 7 with friends or family. It doesn't matter to me what you ate yesterday or what you ate today. You have to have a snack. And as you move forward with this routine and using time as the outside in, you will become safer. You will work with your team on your trauma and PTSD and become a little bit more comfortable beginning the process of feeling those feelings inside your body. A lot of my patients think that normal eating is just eating 3 meals. Sorry, but sometimes we need snacks. And I'll speak for myself. Even if I have a dinner reservation at 7:30, as a normal eater, I will eat something at 6:30 or 7 o'clock before I leave. Because I'll be honest, guys, when I walk in that restaurant, you know this, the first thing that hits the table is the bread basket. Yeah, sometimes I've walked in. One of the biggest recovery words I use in my practice is the word flexibility. And I'm really hungry for a lot of reasons. Maybe I got stuck in a meeting. Maybe I had a patient that was having a really rough time and I couldn't take my lunch break on my time. But you need to be able to have the flexibility in intuitive eating to be able to eat a snack even before dinner if you are hungry. So you don't get to the point where you're at that 1. When you are at 1, that is a roadblock to intuitive eating. Okay? So I just want to go back again for those of you to see it. This is the technique. I want you to use time. Now, if you're able to do these things that I've encouraged you to do, and you are ready to begin the intuitive eating process, ta-da, you actually have success. Yay, here you are. That chatter that was in your head, the uninvited guest that decided to show up at the wedding or the campfire that you didn't invite is gone. You have food freedom. You have self-trust. You have rebuilt the trust. You can connect with the food. You're breaking away from diet culture. You're not eating with food rules or rituals or beliefs. The other really cool thing that happens is that you actually start to develop a normal circadian rhythm of hunger, where your body is actually telling you, hey, Deb, I'm hungry. You need to eat. I don't even need to look at a clock anymore. I know my body's rhythm. I know when I'm going to feel physical need for food, just like you have it, all of you here, for sleep. Most of us want to fall asleep at a certain time and wake up at a certain time. Yes, some of us can't fall asleep at certain times because you have to cram for a test, or you're going to go out at night, or whatever, and you go past your body's natural circadian rhythm. But I can almost guarantee you're going to wake up at the natural time. You can roll back over, but your body is probably going to stir up and wake up. It's the same process if you actually are successful with intuitive eating that you will develop when you start to trust your body. I also want you to know that because I believe in body size acceptance, and those of you who are my patients on this webinar, It is important that you understand that you have to be comfortable in your body at any size. And sometimes that may not be your criteria, but it's ours. The really cool thing about intuitive eating is it can be achieved at any size. You can begin and achieve this process and achieve the goal at any size. And that's wonderful to hear. The other really neat thing that happens when you are successful with intuitive eatings is you get away from the dialogue of good foods and bad foods, or healthy or unhealthy. All right? I'm going to go back one more time before I open it up to questions at this spot. I'm going to use me as an example again. All right? So if I'm really moving forward and establishing this normal relationship with food and intuitive eating, I am able to begin to eat when I am physically hungry and continue to eat until I am physically full. Now, anybody who knows me knows my favorite candy are Reese's peanut butter cups. I love them. They're amazing. If I want one, and typically I give myself permission to eat what I want anyway, maybe every day, I begin to eat when I'm hungry, and I can either save room for my Reese's peanut butter cup so I can get to feel full. I know that because there are no such things as good foods and bad foods, or healthy or unhealthy, nothing detrimental or bad is going to happen to my body, to my medical self, to my organs if I eat a Reese's peanut butter cup in moderation. Remember, intuitive eating gets rid of food noise, and we have food freedom. I'm not panicking because I ate a Reese's peanut butter cup, and I don't need to eat the entire package of Reese's peanut butter cups because the next day I'm never eating one again. That is not the goal of intuitive eating, and that is absolutely a roadblock. And as I move forward through this process and I ask you a lot of questions, sometimes, again, we have to pause and slow down and discuss, why do we have those thoughts? Okay, so again, success through this process. Get rid of the chatter, develop a natural circadian rhythm of hunger. It can be achieved at any size, and we get rid of the food noise of good foods, bad foods, healthy, unhealthy. Now, as promised, I am going to open up. Molly, I know you're out there somewhere. I would love to answer any questions that you might have of intuitive eating or anything that I've actually discussed. So that way, when we're done with this webinar, even if you walk away from this webinar, and I know that Molly said that it's going to be taped or recorded so you can listen to my lovely voice at any other time. And Molly also told me that it's going to be on their YouTube channel. And again, Molly, thank you. It's an honor that I've done this with your forum. So here we are, Q&A. Go for it. What do you got?
Still waiting for things to come in.
Okay. If there's no questions, that tells me I did a great job, Molly.
That is true. Okay, so here's some. How can I prevent the feeling, not the nauseous feeling?
Okay, that's a great question. So a lot of my patients, things happen from the outside, whether it's failing a test that you thought you studied really hard for, death, loss, trauma, things that happen. The way the human body works is when we have things come along that are unfortunate, we have all these things that happen, like secreting hormones. One of the hormones that our bodies secrete as a medical provider is cortisol. Cortisol is a stress hormone that lowers down those feelings. It's natural. What happens is it can confuse intuitive eating a little bit, and we don't have hunger. And when we go too long and we go past 3 to 5 hours without eating, we can end up in that starvation place. That is nausea. That is not the goal. And as a dietitian, we have our little tricks on how to prevent that feeling. But that is not intuitive eating. You've gone too far. Did that answer the question, Molly?
Yes, thank you so much. Okay, so we have a few more coming in. Do you have any advice for loved ones who make comments about how much you eat when you're eating intuitively?
Wow, that is a great question. That actually comes up on a regular basis in my practice. So, and it happens during holidays a lot, by the way, because a lot of my patients or people don't see people regularly on a regular basis. And then the food chatter comes in, or the diet culture comes in, and all of that. So, if you feel comfortable, what I encourage my patients to do is sit back and say, I'm really not comfortable with you commenting about what I'm eating. If you don't mind, can you keep your thoughts to yourself? All right? Sometimes, if it continues and you feel very uncomfortable, again, I want you to feel like you can eat and develop that circadian rhythm. It's okay to excuse yourself. You don't even need to say anything, or maybe you do, depending on who you're with, and go to the bathroom or go to your room and just breathe. Pause and go back. Okay? Nobody's giving us medals. I know I have none. I grew up in the generation where you had to finish all your food. It's probably also a little ethnic, but I have no medals. I'm 60 years old. My closet is completely empty. So you guys are in control of how you act and react in every situation. And it's okay to pause.
Thank you, Deborah. Okay, so we have a bunch more questions coming in. If I wake up and I'm not physically hungry, should I wait to eat until I'm hungry or eat to get some nutrients in the morning?
That's an amazing question. Thank you, whoever asked that. And interesting enough, it also comes up a lot in my practice, especially for my younger patients who go to, primary school, middle school, high school, or they've got to get on the road to commute. They take a train into the city. So what I always say is most people don't wake up with physical need for food. It doesn't happen. Your body is literally just circulating your blood, trying to get things moving. It's why as we age, we get up a little bit slower. Never knew that would happen, by the way. But it's the same thing with your hunger. Your blood doesn't go right to your stomach and say, hello, here I am. But I will tell you that if you don't feel physical need for food, 1 to 2 hours after you wake up, you absolutely need to have a balanced meal. You need to start your day. You need to start to get the metabolic function up. You need to start to build that pattern through the day so that way you can move into the intuitive eating. Okay?
Thank you. So can you talk more about food rituals and how they're different from food traditions like pizza on Friday night?
That was a great question. Food rituals are where my patients have beliefs that they've done over time. So the way I usually begin talking about this in my practice is a food ritual or a food belief is not something that you just woke up and started. Usually it's something that you've done over and over and over again. Okay? And then for some reason, the uninvited guest, the food noise, the chatter, starts to believe it. And what you do is you make a ritual of that, where now you have to do that. For instance, I can't eat after 7 o'clock at night. Or I have to make sure that when I eat my food, I put my fork down in between my bites. I have to make sure that I'm eating asparagus with dinner every night. These are rituals. A tradition, I'll speak for my own, for some of my own, every year on Thanksgiving, I wake up with my kids and we watch the Thanksgiving parade. The minute it's over, oh, by the way, a tradition during the parade every year, and I have adult children, is making Cinnabons. Okay, so we eat Cinnabons while we watch the parade, and the minute the parade is over, another tradition in our pajamas is driving out on Long Island to the pie farm so I can get pies from my brother's house. Two $30 pies. This year we brought three. My son had to add one in, whatever. There was a lot of pie at that house, but that's a tradition, different than a ritual. A ritual is something that you're doing here. A tradition is something that we do because it's food freedom and it's fun.
Thank you. Another question. If you have intrusive thoughts from sexual trauma, can you tend to eat more than usual in one meal?
When you have intrusive thoughts from trauma, there really is no physical sensation that you give yourself permission to feel. So yes, the answer is yes. Food becomes the vehicle for that feeling, that emotional feeling that you have. And that is something that you really want to discuss with your dietitian and your therapist so you can work together as a team to be more comfortable in that process, to be able to not go past the full and feel that uncomfortably full feeling.
Thank you. Here's another question. As a female, what can I do about the cravings and difficulties of eating past fullness during my menstrual cycle?
Excellent question. It's interesting. I was going to talk about that during the webinar, but there's a lot to talk about. So sometimes what ends up happening when you're a woman and you're premenstrual, it's normal that your bodies shift in hormones. One of the hormones that shift is serotonin, and our bodies become more hungry. Okay? I'm not at that stage anymore, but I was. So what I want you to know is that when you increase your protein, as well as your sources of carbohydrates from grains and perhaps fruits and vegetables, those cravings tend to go down a bit. Again, one of the goals of intuitive eating is not giving up macronutrients, carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. If you are doing that, and again, that's a roadblock to begin the process of intuitive eating, then you will absolutely struggle during that period of time, PMS, and want to eat more and not feel satiated. So the cravings for sweets or the cravings for chocolate or salt or carbohydrates that occur is because you're not providing your body with enough at that time.
Great, thank you for answering that. Looks like we have one more question. How long does it take to become an intuitive eater?
That's a great question. So that is something that's very individualized, very individualized. And while you're working with your dietitian through this process, you might find that something happens and slows down your progress. You might find that you need to pause. Something might have happened that disturbed the normal process of intuitive eating. And it's okay to pause. Once you're done with pause, you get right back up and you start moving forward. So the process is individualized, just like everything I do in my practice is individualized. There's no script. I don't have a piece of paper written and say, this is what we're going to do at every session. We are a team. You are a team with your collaborative team. Okay, I hope this answered your questions.
Yes, thank you. Just one more question coming in. There's a clinician working towards their LMHC, who works with a lot of clients who have various struggles with eating and food. Is there any resources or workbooks or trainings that you would suggest? Maybe you can share them.
Right. There is so many resources. First of all, where Molly is, NEDA, I have to tell you, if those of you don't know, NEDA is an acronym for National Eating Disorder Association. I do a lot of volunteer work with NEDA. They are wonderful and they're filled with resource. Of course, this gives me the opportunity to plug my book. Thank you for that. I wrote a book. I've always wanted to write a book, always, but I never really had the time. The book is a relatable book, and if those of you who didn't read it, in the back of the book, I have clinicians that added their thoughts, doctors, therapists, trauma therapists. They added their own experiences with patients that struggle with food weight and body image. I also had patients in recovery add parents and also definitions of eating disorders that people aren't aware of. I have so many ARFID patients now. It is amazing to me, as long as I've been doing this work, right, Molly, that there are so many newer eating disorders that pop up that we need training on, and you as clinicians will absolutely need to work through. I just spoke to a pediatrician the other day of one of my patients. She did not even know what orthorexia was. It is fine with me. I love educating. I am here to help educate you about eating disorders. Eating disorders do not have a shape or a size. Eating disorders are a mental health issue, and they show up different ways. All right? It's our responsibility to educate you. My book has all the newer ones are written inside there. And again, NEDA is a resource.
Thank you so much, Deborah. I think that's all the questions we have for tonight. And thank you all, so much for everything that you've done for NEDA. It's been an amazing webinar. I feel like I've learned so much, and it's evident that everybody here has learned so much. So we really appreciate all that you do. Okay, so good night, everybody, and thank you so much for attending. I've included a link in the chat to our website and also to a brief survey just to get any feedback about the webinar to improve quality and get ideas about future webinars. Thank you, everybody, for being here, and good night.
And I want to thank all of you that attended. Molly, thank you for this. Shivani, you're out there somewhere. Thank you for all of this. And of course, thank you to NEDA. And thank you to all of you who showed up. And I hope you felt comfortable in this not judgment zone and at least took away one thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Good night.
Bye.